radio show a writer named Joel Gilbert, who's written a couple of books, and the most recent book that he's written is about Frank Marshall Davis. Obama's mom and dad. That's true. And he, the name of the book is called Reds and the Deception by Joel Gilbert.
Did he write it? Joel Gilbert.
Yeah, Joel Gilbert wrote it, but he had him on his show, and he talks about how, all the pictures that we've seen of Obama's mom and all that dirt that's on her, and how she was connected with Frank Marshall Davis, teaching communism. Well, he's done some investigative stuff, and he's pulled up some really... In his book, he talks about Frank Marshall Davis was a Russian undercover KGB agent.
I mean, if that were to come out as true, obviously I wouldn't be very surprised, and I wouldn't... it would be no shock to me at all. Right. The guy was a card-carrying... In fact, the biggest shock to me would be that they would dare, and I'm talking about the KGB, would be stupid enough to make a guy in America who is already a member of the Communist Party USA a card-carrying member. Why would they would use him as a spy? He's already a card-carrying. He would be the guy that not the IRS, but the CIA would be looking at.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because Obama's grandfather was part of the CIA.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right.
Interesting.
I've got a soundbite if you want to hear it real quick. I can play it and we get this started on this topic, because I've got some stuff that's just going to blow your mind.
Suddenly, Frank Marshall Davis is getting a lot of attention. So kudos there. We salute you on your groundbreaking research, Joel.
Thanks. Great to be back with you. My film, Dreams from My Real Father, this came out in 2012. And it's just fascinating to me to watch how long it takes for people to really pay attention and realize it. It's coming out more and more. The influence of Frank Marshall Davis is undeniable. He had a profound ideological impact, and I can talk about that. But all the research is in, and I think I've convinced a lot of people and demonstrated that Frank Marshall Davis was Barack Obama's real biological father, and he then became his ideological mentor. There's absolutely no question. The Kenya story is simply a cover story, because he knows Americans would be uncomfortable if he said, my father was a Soviet agent who indoctrinated me into the Marxist ideology. Incredible. And I am wanting to come and live in the White House so I can help spread this all over the country. That wouldn't work. So he had to say, my father was a goat herder from Kenya, and I'm going to bring people together. So the reality is that Obama is what we call a red diaper baby. This means the child of a Communist Party USA member. And I want to tell you, Davis was not only a Communist Party member, he was a communist propagandist. And he also acted as a Soviet agent. People don't understand this. He went from Chicago to Hawaii in 1948 on the orders of the Kremlin to help start a strike and organize the dock workers with the goal of taking over the Hawaiian government and expelling U.S. Navy. So first, he started a strike for 6 months. The goal was to get rid of U.S. naval forces and allow for Soviet expansion in Asia. The strike he organized eventually failed, and he went on to become a communist propagandist and writer for years. And then, as you can see, in 1960, he fathered the current President of the United States, who has hidden this background. And that's the profound manipulation of the electorate, is he tried to make people think his family was from Kenya, rather than the reality that he was a radical and the child of a Communist Party member, and he was indoctrinated into this ideology which calls for the elimination of the United States.
What do you think about that?
Well, call me a conspiracy theorist, and by the way, full disclosure, I did watch the entire movie of Dreams of My Real Father, which is what I didn't read. If he wrote a book about it, I don't know, but there's a video that is pretty much a video version of Dreams of My Real Father, made by this guy that was just talking.
Right. Yes.
So I watched the whole thing, and full disclosure, I actually fully 100% believe it, and I'm not, I'm that guy that's always battling against the 9/11 truthers and stuff like that, because when it comes to conspiracy theories, and I'm sure I've said this on the show before, it has to be believable and provable with science, or at least, at the very least, it cannot be easily disproven. And so that's why, the truther stuff, I'm just not going down that road. I just flat out just don't believe it. But with regards to this makes a lot of sense. I mean, talk about connecting dots. I mean, everything makes so much sense when you look at everything that he talks about in Dreams of My Real Father. The only thing that I'm not 100% sure of, and I think that's totally speculation, that could be true, is that Frank Marshall Davis is his real father. Honestly, I think that may actually take away from any points that he's trying to make about the fact that he's a freaking communist, and he's a communist propagandist. I think him going so far as to try to convince everybody that it's his real father, honestly, is practically irrelevant. Who cares if it's his real biological father? He was just as important to him as a real father.
When he even spoke about him in his, there's a stand-up where Obama apparently is standing up in front of a small crowd, I guess maybe in his 20s or 30s, to a microphone. I guess it's open mic night. And he's talking about his book, Dreams from My Father, and he talks about Marshall Davis being a huge impact on his life. That's Obama saying.
He's pretty much a father figure.
Right. Yeah. Obama says that, and Obama says that his biological father, the guy from Kenya, flew back to Kenya, and he really didn't have anything to do with it.
I mean, there's so many facts that are there's no dispute whatsoever. The fact that he was a very influential mentor to Barack Obama. Anybody that tries to, I don't think anybody's ever tried to dispute that. I think that progressives kind of giggle behind the closed doors about the fact that this was such an influential person in Barack Obama's life. Marxists, communists, they secretly, without making too much fanfare out of it, they think that this is the reason why he's the most important leader in their lifetime.
Right. No, absolutely.
Stuff like that. So there's no dispute of that.
Right. There's some information that I was reading, and I come across a couple of different articles from Joel, and one of the things that he says, and it's just uncanny how these things just kind of crisscross across history, if you will. Frank Marshall Davis going out to Hawaii, and then Obama grown up, and then wanting to come back. He comes back to Chicago to get in with the original group, the group of communists, and he goes back to Chicago to one of Frank Marshall Davis's best friends, Vernon Jarrett.
Bill Ayers.
No, Vernon.
I thought it was Bill Ayers.
He went.
Vernon Jarrett. Yeah, I don't know anything about him.
Well, he has a daughter-in-law.
You'll have to tell me about him.
He's got a daughter-in-law. Her name is Valerie.
Oh, it's awesome. There you go.
Valerie Jarrett. So, I mean, it's this connection. I mean, but yeah, I mean, he got in with Bill Ayers, but when way back early in the 1932s, Frank Marshall Davis was a journalist. He joined the Communist Party back in 1932, and his whole goal was to trick blacks and the media that communism will eliminate racism. That's what we need. We need to bring communism because that'll create a level playing field, if you will. And according to Joel, Frank was an original, they call black Bolshevik. And so apparently there was a black movement here in America in the 1930s for the communists to infiltrate the black culture, if you will. And there was a
lot of. Oh, go ahead.
That's okay. I was going to say there was a very influential man that was involved. His name was Harry Haywood, and he was one of the leading figures in both the Communist Party of the United States and the Communists of Soviet Union. And he was black. and he lived. He was born in 1898 and died in 1985. Well, his goal was to connect the political philosophy of the Communist Party with the issues of race, and he did.
Okay.
So in 1926, he joined with other African American communists, and they all traveled to the Soviet Union to study the effect of communism on racial issues that were found in America. And his work resulted in his selection to be head of the Communist Negro Department in America. His first book, Negro Liberation, in 1948, after he left the party, and he wrote an autobiography called Black Bolshevik. And the Bolsheviks were the ones who helped start the communist revolution, if you will, in Russia. And that was the Bolsheviks was the big party that
they were the workers.
Yeah, that really helped to fund the Soviet Union. So the Black Bolsheviks, he talks about being black and being a communist, and he says the major contributing factor to his whole life is the Marxist thinking on the national question of African Americans in the United States. He was also the founder of something called the Maoist New Communist Movement. And all of that was headed up and linked up to Frank Marshall Davis.
Well, that doesn't surprise me at all. And a lot of people don't realize this, too. It's very interesting and important to point out and reiterate that you are talking about the 30s here. People, even older people, don't remember or have never even known that up until the Cold War started, communism really wasn't that demonized.
No.
I mean, it wasn't favored in America because they knew that there was a lot of worry about what kind of restrictions would be put on people's freedoms if you were to implement those kind of communist or socialist policies in America. But there were a lot of people that were like, yeah, this is a better way, let's do it. And those that opposed it were not so, they weren't so passionate about their opposition to it. The passion for the opposition of communism did not come until what happened between us and the Soviet Union.
Well, the videos,
during World War II,
right,
and right after World War II, and there was just,
you remember the infamous, I don't know if it's infamous, but the absolute famous video. It just gives me chills there in the East Block, where that girl literally is trying to run through barbed wire to get out of East Berlin. Literally.
That was years later, right?
But it's I guess you would say the video and media to bring that to light, to show really what's going on in the East Block. I mean, what really?
Well, what it really does, what I like to point out when you look at the Berlin Wall situation, is this is a great illustration, and believe me, the West used it as propaganda. And propaganda doesn't always have to be negative. I think that propaganda to expose the negative aspects of communism is good propaganda, and I think it should be propagated amongst the masses so that they could see what the truth is. But anyway, that's what was so great about the Berlin Wall, is it was almost an experiment. Let's do an experiment where we'll have one group of people who have to live under strict communism.
Right.
And right next door to them, in the same city, we're going to make the whole rest of the city totally 100% capitalism. And then we'll put a big, giant barbed wire fence between the two of them, and let's see what happens. You never saw any video of people who had the fear of dying on their face as they ran full speed sprint into a barbed wire fence and then trying to wrestle their clothes out of it as they try to, climb through it. You don't see that going from